Good afternoon and welcome back to Just Jocelyn Part 2. My guest is Lou Gargiulo. And in the first half, we talked about what it's like to be a candidate. Why do you run? What does it cost? What is going on in the state of New Hampshire? Both parties have got some extremes, extremely doing nothing, extremely doing a lot. I think in full disclosure, we're all at 75, 80%, both sides, in agreement, not the politicians, we the people. And there's 10 to 15% in there that's driving people crazy. My bottom line is we don't need pornography of any kind in our schools. Teach the kids math, English, history, civics, a language, and music. Lose the social studies and the social this and the social that. China is teaching their children biology, chemistry, Latin. What are we teaching? Pronouns. What are we teaching? You can cut your body parts off if you don't identify. And I'm not being sarcastic and putting it down. Minors should not be dealing with any of these issues whatsoever. Their job is to become the best, smartest, academic, producing people in the world. Because America is the greatest country in the world, but we're teetering right now. And what are we doing? Teaching our kids to be furries. Teaching our kids about all sorts of stuff that they don't need to know until they're 18. Better still, 21, because that's when you're allowed to drink. So I think all that should be at 21. The other problem I have is my taxes, your taxes. Show me any of you, including you legislators. Show me 46. Show me Kamala Harris. Where in any state constitution or the federal corporate constitution where it says you can take my taxes and use it for anything you darn well please. Sending it to other countries to build their walls? Sending it to other countries for bioweapons labs? Sending my money to other countries to pay for their migrants? Taking my money to pay for migrants coming illegally over our northern and our southern border? And telling me to shut up and sit down because I haven't got any skin in the game. My money's in the game. My property taxes are in the game. And when 80% of my property taxes are paying for this BS, for kids to not read or write, they can't fill out an application when they go to work, they can't make change. I went to Starbucks the other day, and the bill was, I think it was $8.41. And I gave him $10.01. He couldn't make change. I'm like, doesn't the little computer register thing do that? It's not working today, and I'm really bad at math. This is what $28,000 a year per student produces? If you're not pissed, I don't know what's wrong with you. If you think it's okay to comply when somebody tells you what you can put on your face or not, when there is no science behind it, I don't know what's wrong with you. Because when you comply, guess what the next time it's going to be? And what's it going to be the next time and the next time? And you don't speak for me, and you don't speak for other people. You want to speak for yourself? Well then, fine. Pony up. Second rant done. We need to fix this, people. Stop yapping about it, going out and drinking your $10 glass of wine and your Bud Light with God only knows who's advertising it. I want the Clydesdales on my Bud. Thank you very much. And let me just put this out here. I grew up in England, and they had drag queens. And they were gorgeous, and they were talented. And what did they do? They did these fantastic, incredible shows for adults. And you couldn't tell the difference between that person and a famous actress, a famous singer, You couldn't tell the difference. Gorgeous voices, gorgeous clothing. You couldn't tell the difference. That was entertainment. That was a show to go to and have the best time in your life. I don't want to look at some guy with a full beard telling me that he's a woman. Sorry, my personal opinion. I loved what it was. Loved it. Everybody did. Keep your audiences to adults, not children. They can decide when they're 18 or 21. Till then, their job is to learn and become productive adults in this world and invent the most incredible things ever known to man, like we used to. On that note, I'm sorry. You got me started when you said we were talking during the break. So welcome back, Lou.
Thank you.
I want to talk about, because you ran and you asked for a recount.
Correct.
Why do we do recounts? And what's really involved? Because we're not punishing the town clerks. We're not taking whips and lashing them, and they hate us forever because we asked for a recount. But yet, that's what I hear out of everybody's mouth. I'm not going to do that. They're going to hate me forever, and then I'll never be able to run again. That's not true.
No, that's not true. And that's what they want to give the picture of. But that is absolutely not the case. The reason why I asked for a recount, knowing full well that the margin that I allegedly lost by was significant and probably almost impossible to overcome, I did it because myself and my team wanted to see literally what happened. And the only holistic way you can do that is to have a recount. I had the ability to do it because I lost by a number that fell within the statute that made it legally them obligated to allow us to do it. And it costs money. You don't do a recount for nothing.
Correct.
The volunteers put in a huge amount of effort, but I paid for the recount. And we did it to find out what actually happened. When you run a race and you run against a person who does very little, almost nothing, spends in the second race almost no money, okay, and wins by a substantial number, you sit back and say, well, how did that happen? And one, for me, the district was changed. It was redistricted, and they took out 3 solid Republican towns, and in the infinite wisdom of the New Hampshire House and Senate, they threw in Exeter, which is 75% Democrat. So they made the district virtually impossible to win. But we wanted to see with our own eyes, and given that I was able to do it, we saw a great deal by doing the recount. We had a phenomenal team of people going through it, people who understood the whole process from the beginning to end. Not only did they count the ballots, but they took photographs, they took videos, they identified a whole array of different things that went wrong with the whole process.
Right. I was up there, and I was absolutely astounded at the amount of work that goes into it, the amount of volunteers. What you're staring at these screens, and you switch off with people so you don't get tired. You're looking at ballots and absentee ballots and mail-in ballots and all these different things, and trying to find out what went wrong. You object to some of these ballots and votes that you can see. I found out that there's a whole procedure, God bless Linda, of boxes.
Correct.
Talk to us about this boxes. It's a big deal.
Oh, yeah, there's a process. There's a chain of custody. There are labels. There are signatures. All of these things. There is tape put on the boxes once the ballots are put into the box. And the whole idea behind it is to create a trail, an accounting trail, that if someone wants to do a recount, they can go back, count the ballots, and have complete confidence that the process, the election process, as specified by the New Hampshire Secretary of State and statute, is followed. And what we found out that in many cases, many of the requirements were not followed. Things as rudimentary as there are tags that go on the box, They have to be signed off by the moderator, by a selectman, or by a town councilor. They have to have date and time and a whole array of other information. They have to be on the boxes. There has to be a tape that if it's put on the box and if it's disturbed, you can see it shows it's disturbed. Well, they put the tape. There were boxes that the tape was disturbed on. We have no idea what happened. There were, out of 7 towns did not follow the requirements in chain of custody in terms of having the labels they did, but nobody signed and timed and dated in all of those kinds of things.
So chain of custody, very similar to when there is a case with the police.
Correct.
Where they gather evidence and it has to be bagged and it has to be tagged and it has to be dated and signed and it goes into evidence boxes and they're sealed and they get locked away. This is supposed to happen to each and every ballot that goes into a ballot box. And oh, by the way, it can't be the Dunkin' Donuts box because they fit in there, can they?
No, it is a specific box. You can tell how many ballots fit in the box. We presented our findings to the Ballot Law Commission about 2 weeks ago, and we have, this is just the report, the slides.
Part, yeah.
We have a book about that thick that has all of the examples and all of the exhibits that go beyond this that was sent to the New Hampshire Attorney General. And to say that there were not significant issues with it is totally untrue. There were significant issues. And it became apparent to the Ballot Law Commission. And after they heard our presentation, and
which was fantastic, by the way.
Thank you. I retained a good attorney.
He was great.
Yeah, he was. And he's a guy who has a lot of criminal experience as well. And he presented saying that if law enforcement did the same thing, they would be thrown out of court. They would not win any cases because there's a process that you're supposed to follow pursuant to statute. And we're not following it. And to make it really the whole thing laughable, when it was all said and done, the Ballot Law Commission took a vote, to either refer this or not to the Attorney General. And there are 5 members there of the Ballot Law Commission. 4 voted to refer it to the Attorney General.
And 1 said no.
And 1 said no. And the one that said no, her background, well, she's a former Democratic State Party chairwoman. Now, mind you, there was another Democrat on the Ballot Law Commission who voted and thought it was a very good report. We went out of our way to make sure that it was presented in a nonpartisan manner.
Correct.
There were no personal attacks.
Correct.
It wasn't directed at any particular individual. We just cited chapter and verse of what was found so that they could understand. And
it's basically an investigation.
Yep.
By regular people.
Yep.
Presenting evidence that was irrefutable.
Yeah, it's irrefutable, and that evidence still sits up in the archive building in Concord. So hopefully the Attorney General will decide to investigate it. Yep, and he will take it and look at it. Now, mind you,
wait.
Yeah.
Hope?
Hope, because there's no guarantee they'll do anything with
not?
it. Because they don't have to. That's the sad commentary.
Did you hear that? We have an investigation, nonpartisan, truth and facts of how many people? 400 people that came together with evidence?
Oh, yeah, huge number.
Huge number. I think it was between 400 and 700 people that came together from all over New Hampshire with evidence. Oh, I found this. Oh, I found that. During the recount, the things we found. And I'd be standing there taking pictures. I don't know what I was taking pictures of, but I go back and I look, and there's tape on the box. It's half off. It's ripped. It's not the legal, legit tape. There's no tags. They've got boxes that are not numbered correctly. I'm sorry, if you can't count to 10, you shouldn't be numbering the boxes. And if that's too brutal for you, tough. We are talking about people's votes in the United States of America, and you've got butterfingers and you're screwing up? I don't think so.
And let's go back to that vote. Interestingly, I'm told the reason why the person voted against referring it is because I said in my close that there needs to be penalties with
no kidding.
violating the state law, the state statute. And I said there should be civil penalties and possibly criminal penalties.
Yes.
And apparently she didn't like that and voted against it. Well, why wouldn't you like it? As I said in my close that day, the people have fought and died to preserve our rights to free elections. And we are allowing them not to be followed. We created statutes that legislatures over the past 100 years have sat there and decided these are the laws that elections should be followed by. And we have towns out there not following and ignoring the statute. We have one particular town that's been cited by the Attorney General on a number of occasions with formal letters. And our investigation.
Really?
Yeah.
A formal letter?
Oh, yeah, there's a formal letter.
Scary. And I don't mean to demean it, but when nothing's done.
Nothing is done. And that, unfortunately, is the reality of it. And I also said, think about this. Why do people stop at stop signs? If no cars are coming left or right, but they still stop? Because they know if they go through the stop sign that they can get a ticket. It can cost them money. Well, our town clerks and moderators and boards of selectmen, nothing is done. Doesn't cost the town money. It doesn't provide any sort of relief to the candidates.
But it totally undermines
the election.
We the people's civil rights, inalienable rights, and ultimately the election of who we voted for.
Absolutely. And it also depresses people's willingness to run in the future because they say, if this is the way it's going to be, they've invested huge amounts of time, talent, and treasure. And I know that I invested a huge amount of time. I'm a very busy person. I run a good-sized company with a lot of people. I did this because I really believe in the American dream. I didn't do this to bolster my ego. I'm way beyond that. I don't need to do it. I did it because I truly believe, and I think people need to come out of the woodwork who believe that things need to change, and they need to run for office. But they also have to have a level of confidence that if they do it, they're going to get a fair shake. We were asked at the end of the presentation, well, can you prove that the election was in any way stolen? Not in those words, but that was implied.
That was there, implied.
Yeah, and the answer was, all we can prove is that there were huge numbers of irregularities that could contribute to almost anything.
Correct.
We can't tell you one way or the other with absolute certainty, but what we can tell you is there are policies and procedures that were put in place by the legislature to ensure elections were not stolen and that no funny business could take place, and those controls were not followed.
So answer me this. So we know, and you should know, go get a New Hampshire Constitution and read it. And keep reading it and read it and read it and reread it. The legislature has the authority to fix this.
Correct.
And they don't.
Absolutely correct.
They refuse.
Correct. As they refuse not to ensure parents' rights are protected. You have people who
we're going to make a bill for that.
Yeah.
We already have it. We already have those rights. You should be protecting them. Actually, that's what the New Hampshire Constitution is supposed to do.
It does.
But you're not upholding it, are you? So who appointed the Ballot Law Commission? Where'd they come from?
The Ballot Law Commission is appointed, I believe, a number of them are appointed by the governor and by the Speaker of the House and I think the President of the Senate, but I'm not 100% sure of how. But they made it perfectly clear at the end of our presentation that they have no ability and authority to enforce it.
Thank you. I almost fell out of my chair for that one.
They have no authority to enforce it.
Correct.
So then where do we go from here?
Well, what were you doing for the last 2 years? And oh, by the way, the legislature has the authority to give somebody do not have the authority. They have the authority, but they don't have the authority to give anybody else the authority of judiciary, legislature, or executive branch. But you did in the Ballot Law Commission.
Correct.
You pulled funny business and gave them authority that you did not have the right to give. and they're making decisions. And then at the end of it all, I literally thought I would choke.
I know.
We don't have the authority.
Yep. Fortunately, they at least had the authority to refer it to the Attorney General, who has the authority to do something with it if he chooses to.
So what do we need to do? Do we all need to go up there with our constitutions and the presentation and demand that he do it or else?
Well, I think that we need to correspond and communicate and send letters and all of those things.
Do they read them?
Probably not, but I'm going to have a formal legal letter sent to them, putting them on notice that we have a request that they investigated fully. I mean, and then beyond that, the potential exists for filing a lawsuit against either the municipalities that were remiss in following the law. I mean, there are, but those things are expensive, and the towns are able to use the taxpayers' money
to protect themselves.
Defend themselves. And is that the way to go? I mean, I think the best way to go, certainly, is to elect people who are going to fulfill their obligation when they raise their right hand and swear that they're going to uphold the Constitution, that they really do that.
Correct.
And that you're going to have a governor who's going to support that, and you're going to have a Senate who's going to support that. Those are all the things that need to happen. So when people go to the ballot box, they have to keep that in mind. But this is a conversation that has to continue, and people have to talk about it constantly, because if they don't, they're losing their rights. And their right to have a free and fair election is clearly in jeopardy. And I'm not sitting here and saying the election was stolen. What I'm saying here is the process that's supposed to be followed wasn't followed. You take that and extend it any way you'd like. That's up for the people out there to do whatever they want with it. But what I can say for sure is our investigation showed that the processes that were put in place to protect the people's election are not being followed, at least in 7 communities. And
if
7 communities, oh yeah. And I mean, this was a microcosm. This was taking a state Senate district and doing a full recount, counting 36,000 ballots.
Should have been a full recount.
Yeah. We did it, a full recount, and that's what we found. So I think by extension, you can assume that these kinds of issues exist. When I can sit here and say many of the policies and procedures and state laws weren't followed in all 7 communities, one has to take pause. How is that possible? And I'm not suggesting it's an organized effort. It's just a lackadaisical attitude that people have about not following the law.
Not protecting the people's sovereignty, their ballots, their vote, their money, and everything else.
Correct. Correct.
To just don't care.
Just dismiss it and don't care. And I think those are the people that we have to start with when it's election time. And it starts at the local level. It starts with the moderators. These are all elected officials. And if you look at who's in those positions, those are the people you have to expect that they're either going to or not. And in one of the communities, I'll give you an idea of the landscape, okay? And it's election day. Picture us standing there. We had about 10 people who were from my campaign holding signs, and everything is going there. And we're on one side, Democrats are on the other side, okay? All of a sudden, the other side starts running around the building. And I said, what's going on? So I sent some of the people to follow them. Well, the moderator told the other side, the Democrats, that buses were coming from a retirement community and they should get there with their sign holders around the building so they could be seen. Okay? It happened. I have witnesses that were there. I happened to be there at the time. That happened. So that's a moderator, clearly, who should be disciplined. And that's why I'm not saying where it was, but that there should be action taken. It's inappropriate. It's not right. And in that same location, there were error after error in violation after violation. Was it intentional? Was it not? I can't say. I don't know what's in their heart.
That one part was intentional.
Yeah, of course.
The other parts, you can't tell. But that was intentional.
Yeah. So that has to tell people that we need to be concerned. If we want to ensure that the future for our children and grandchildren is even half as good as it was for us, you need to have elections you can count on.
We the people, we the taxpayers, we the citizens have to hold them accountable. We don't need bills and other legislators to hold themselves and others accountable. We have to do it because you have to understand we are the boss. We are the boss. And when we figure out how to yank the money, they better watch out.
Yep. Absolutely.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much for coming. I appreciate, you letting me talk with you and break this down to the basic level. I think people need to understand. If you want to know more about this, where can is this recorded anywhere?
No, that's not.
Or did Granite Grok?
Granite Grok posted it, yes.
So if you go to Granite Grok and look for the Ballot Law Commission meeting up at the archives, you can find it and you can hear for yourself what went on, what evidence was presented, not in its entirety, but bits and pieces, and do your homework, do your research. I want to thank you for joining us again, and we will see you next week.